Hi, I'm Jane Cundiff, and today I'm going to share some information with you about herbs for our own health and for pollinators, attracting them to our gardens. I've been teaching biology and chemistry and human health and environmental biology for close to 50 years now, but there's so much to learn, so much always to learn about nature and health. So today I'm going to share with you some information. So I'm going to share the screen with my PowerPoint. And get the slideshow going. Okay, so this is growing herbs for tea and for pollinators. So every gardener knows that for a healthy garden, we need to plant the right seeds. And the same is true for our own health. And SEEDS is an acronym that stands for sunshine, exercise, emotions, diet, and sleep. And we need to keep all of these in a good balance. And there's a lot of good chemistry and biology behind those. And all gardeners know that we get a lot of that out there. And gardeners actually live longer, healthier lives than most people. So one of the things to stay healthy is to eat and drink our greens and grow them. That keeps us in the sunshine. But we know that all leafy greens have some anti-inflammatory properties, and they help to boost our immune system, and they keep our joints and our brain healthy. This right here is an example of my garden tea. So this is just one day. My garden tea always varies depending upon the time of year. So this was probably a late summer batch here, and you can see there's some red clover in it and some goldenrod flowers and some anise hyssop flowers and some mint and just all kinds of things. So I go out with my little bucket and pick all the herbs I can find to put in my tea. So why should we grow herbs? And one of the reasons is our pollinators. They love them. This is a picture I took in my backyard garden. And that little bee there is really tiny. It's about half the size of a honeybee. And it's a local native bee. There are over 100 different species of bees just here in Virginia. And that little one is just a gorgeous metallic green bee that I see in summertime come to these are chive flowers. They're really tiny flowers that I got a close up of. But herbs are pretty easy to grow. They're generally fairly healthy plants, don't get very many diseases, tough. Most of them are perennials. And for the most part, for the stronger herbs anyway, deer don't like them. And another reason to grow herbs is the environmental impacts of our drinks. So most people, all of us have some drinks that we get from containers, and containers have to have factories to make them, and they have to have mines to make the factories and mines to make the cans, and you have to tear down the forest and build stores and send out trucks, and then you got all this garbage, mounds and mounds of trash. And if you recycle, then you've got recycling bins and recycling trucks. So just don't do that. You can skip it all and grow tea, grow your drinks in your own backyard. And in fact, if you do the math, 8 drinks a day. So if you actually drank 8 drinks out of different containers over a 90-year lifespan, that's 262,800 containers. And then plus all the factories, the mining, the transport, the trucks, the waste, the fossil fuel, all these are destroying our habitat. We wonder why our biomes are breaking down. And that's not to mention the weird chemicals and the calories that are there. If you do the math on that, you'd gain more than 1,000 pounds, even if only 3 of those drinks had sugar in them. So stay healthy, grow your own drinks, and reuse your own mugs. What are we thinking? And the answer is generally, we're not thinking too much. So fill your yard with herbs instead of grass. This is my backyard, and slowly I changed it from nothing but grass when we first moved here into gardens that are everywhere. So I just buy a lot of herbs or perennial plants, and I plant them and help to encourage them to grow. You can kind of see on the edge of the woods. So I have an older forest here. There's a lot of wild plants there, and I leave those there. And we just basically mow that area down or bush hog this area right back in here about once every 3 years to keep it from growing back into forest again, because we have to keep the big trees away from the house. But basically, there's blackberries and Solomon's seal and a lot of different wild plants that are good in teas. And then the rest, a lot of these herbs and other kinds of flowers and perennials, even the daylilies. Daylilies are edible, so they're beautiful on salads. You can eat them instead of buying stuff from the store. One of my favorite herbs is the mint family herbs, and there's a lot of, I think there's like over 200 species in the mint family that, and a lot of them, in fact, most of our kitchen herbs, a lot of them are from the mint family. But you can tell they're pretty easy to identify, and you can feel the stem. And there's three things that really identify a mint family herb. They have square stalks, they have simple opposite leaves, and you can see that these leaves on this plant here are opposite each other. And they have bugle-like flowers, and usually they're pretty tiny, and you have to look closely. And up here in the corner, you can kind of see the little bugles on the flowers. So when you've got those identified, then those are not toxic, and you can use them in your teas. And some of the health benefits of the mint family, a lot of health benefits are not well researched because nobody's going to pay for the research, which is pretty sad. So, the chemical companies pay for medicines because they get a lot of big bucks off of selling you a medicine, but nobody's going to say, oh, spend $1 million on research, but you can buy the stuff or get the stuff in your own backyard for free. So, there is some research out there, and you can find it. I often look at on Google for different kinds of herbs and what they've got behind it. But the mint family are gentle, they're not toxic, they can be eaten raw or cooked, made into tea, and they are leafy greens. So they also have the vitamins, minerals, they are anti-inflammatory. So when you feel those joints getting stiff, especially in the wintertime, it's probably because you haven't been eating or drinking your greens. So eat lots more and drink lots more. Keep your joints, muscles, and even your brain. So light inflammation in the brain has been linked to all kinds of dementia and other problems. So eat and drink your greens. They boost our immune system, they help our digestion, our brain health, and reduce stress because they actually can reduce blood pressure and stabilize your blood pressure. So the mint family can be found naturally from spring to fall, and you can also plant them. Most of the cultivated ones flower in fall, but most of them like some moisture. So you want to be sure that you have them someplace where you can water them if you get into a big dry spell. And many of them can take some shade, so they're good plants to grow if they at least get several hours of sun. So all these perennials I've got here, these are all different kinds of mint plants from the mint family, and I'm growing every one of them, and I love every one. The ones that are in blue listed here, chocolate mint, anise hyssop, and lemon balm, are probably the ones these are some of the simple ones to grow and the best in tea. They're really delicious, and you can grow big patches of it. They grow fairly quickly. So also notice down here that they've got sage, thyme, basil, lavender. Those are all from the mint family too, and you can actually use some of those in teas. So they're all good to go. The one annual I really do like to grow is holy basil, or also called tulsi. So I'm going to go over a few of these herbs individually. This is a lemon balm hedge that I've got growing in my backyard. And actually, I've got about 3 of these hedges. I just love lemon balm. It's one of the best, my favorite teas. It's probably easiest and best just to go out to some nursery somewhere that sells herbs and buy a few pots of them and start like that, because it's pretty hard to get herbs growing from seed. They're tiny seed and they take a long time to sprout. So getting them started and growing them in your backyard. This batch here is probably 15 years old. So they do get larger and they continue to grow, and they're just wonderful to have. But lemon balm is supposed to relieve stress, reduce anxiety, can help ease insomnia and digestive problems. It may boost cognitive function and mood. It makes you smile. It has a nice mild flavor. How could it get any better than that? So lemon balm is definitely one that I have on my list as a big herb that I use in almost all my teas. And a hyssop is also another one. This is one that's not quite as easy to find. It's also called licorice mint. It tastes kind of licoricey when it's raw, but when you make it into a tea, you don't taste that licorice so much. But it really soothes your throat. It's known to help dry coughs, especially, and to soothe the throat for any kind of congestion, bronchitis, things like that. So it's good for digestive properties. And also it is from the mint family. So it has the other characteristics as well. And notice that those butterflies love those flowers. So pollinators like these too. So they're great to grow anywhere around your other gardens. Holy basil is the one annual I do like to grow. It's actually named after a Hindu goddess called Tulsi. And this herb is considered holy in India because she helps us to stay healthy and adapt to daily problems. And that's called an adaptogen. Holy basil normalizes blood pressure, reduces stress and anxiety, has a positive effect on memory and cognitive function, and boosts the immune system. So yeah, use holy basil. I use that a lot. And it's I grow that one from seed and from just my seeds from last year. So every year I grow the herb and then collect the seeds and sprout them in the house because they're tiny, tiny seeds. And I've got some sprouting out there right now, and then plant them in your garden. They will pop up in your garden naturally, but they pop up pretty late, and oftentimes I want them earlier than that, so I start them inside. The wild mint family, there are wild mints out there, lots of them everywhere. And as if you identify them as a mint, they are healthy. Purple dead nettle is one that's coming up right now here in early spring. And creeping Charlie are also called ground ivy, and that one comes up also in spring. So these the wild ones you can just taste a little bit once you're sure that it's from the mint family. And if you like it, you use it. If it's too strong for you, then don't use it. Find something else. Some of the fall flowering mints that are wild bergamot, which is also a type of bee balm. Self-heal is one, it's a smaller plant. And Virginia mountain mint can get pretty good size, and the bees love that one too. And it's very potent as mint. Here's some other wild tea plants. If you got any blackberries out there growing, you can pick the fresh leaves off. In fact, Celestial Seasonings uses blackberry leaves in their tea often. Chickweed is growing right now in spring. It's an early spring plant. Lamb's quarters is later, and it is great. It tastes a lot like spinach. I grow it instead of spinach because it's way easier. So it just pops up in my garden, and I actually kind of cultivate around it. And who cares about that tomato? I'd rather have a little batch of lamb's quarters. So I have those. Yarrow is a spring flower, real common everywhere here. Autumn olives everywhere, and that provides berries that you can eat and make a drink out of. And goldenrod makes a good tea that's good for urinary tract infections and for anti-inflammatory. So have several perennial herb gardens. I have some up by the house, and I have some here down in my big garden, which is down the mountain a little bit from the house. And I have the whole middle section of the garden lined out for things like my bee balm and other perennials. And then like this is a fleabane weed that really attracts the pollinators. And it just happened to pop up in the garden, and I noticed the flowers on it were pretty and white, and I noticed all the bees on it, and I say, okay, you can stay. So, so you can keep those there, and then grow these herbs. Anything that attracts your pollinators, you need them to pollinate your squashes and your tomatoes, and most of our other vegetables need our pollinators. So grow some herbs to attract them. How to use the herbs? You can use them in all different kinds of ways. One of the ways is I add some of them. I add to my greens, and so lamb's quarters especially. And so this is mostly kale that I grow in my garden, but then I just go out picking all kinds of other greens, and then I wilt them. In the microwave for a few minutes, and then I food process them and lay them out on a tray and freeze them, and then stick them in a Ziploc bag. So they freeze quite well, and it's great to take a chunk out all through the winter. And I still have some in my freezer. You can dry them, and so generally I dry them. I put newspapers out on my bed in the back room, on my extra bedroom, and I let them dry there for about a week or so, depending on the humidity. And then for the last hour or so, I put them in a dryer. So this is my food dryer that I use just to make sure they're extra dry before I put them in jars. So this is my herb cabinet here inside the back bedroom that I keep cool all year, most of the year. And this is where all my teas are. So I've dried a lot of different kinds of greens. Another thing that you can do is make tinctures with them. So these are several jars. I just started making these this year, and it's really kind of fun. And so it's really easy to do. So I went through in fall of last year, I went and gathered some herbs that I wanted to make a tincture out of. I just took off the best parts of the plant and stuffed them, chopped them up and stuffed them inside of a mason jar and poured alcohol over the top of them to the top of the jar. And I used rum for some and brandy for others. And then you just let them sit for about 6 weeks, and it draws a lot of the good stuff out of the herbs, and and are quite tasty. And they make good tinctures all winter long. And I still have some of mine. So this is for instance, goldenrod. Here's a goldenrod tincture, is good for anti-inflammatory. And then I've got lavender is actually good to help you sleep. So I use some of this at night sometimes. And then, of course, there's the tea. And I have an extra handout. If you're interested, you can email me and I'll send you how to make the tea in a little bit more detail. But basically, you pick or cut only the healthy parts of the plants. Most plants, the leaves and the flowers can be used. Check out individual plants. So especially if they're wild plants, make sure you learn a lot about them before you pick them. But make sure they don't have any pesticides or road dust on them. You want to make sure they're clean and fresh and wild. And then you cover the fresh leaves, flowers, and tender stems with boiling water, and then just let it cool. So I use this great big Pyrex 2-quart container here, and I stuff all the plants in there. This is my tea made from these dried herbs, but in the summer and spring I use the fresh herbs. I just stuff them in here, cover them with water, bring them almost to a boil in the microwave, and then let them steep overnight or longer. Doing it for a day or two really brings out a lot more of the medicinal and healthy qualities of the tea. And with any tea, you can do that. Even with tea bags and stuff, you can do that. It's better to leave it sit. So make sure that you get good references. Make sure you identify the plants that you have. There's a lot of plants out there that are medicinal, and medicinals can run from, a handful of it's healthy for you to a little drop in a bowl of water will kill you. So make sure that you learn about a medicinal and don't use the really strong ones. I would highly suggest not, but use the more ones, especially the ones that are edible, then you know that you can use them in teas. But there's some references. Ital Acres is a local Floyd small family farm where you can buy some plants for them. They also have good YouTube videos that you can look at. Herbal Jedi is great on YouTube. He's a great speaker and has all kinds of herbs one at a time he talks about, and so does Susan Weed. So these are great herbalists that you can learn a lot from. Floyd Eco Village also has a wonderful medicinal and learning garden, and Floyd Eco Village is open to the public and from dawn till dusk, and you can go in. They also have a farm store there, and the medicinal garden is just outside their farm store. I helped them to build the garden, and those little tags, here's a little tag by the catnip, and it says something about the plant. It gives its common name and its scientific name, and says a little bit about the plant and how it's used medicinally. So those are in the garden, so you can learn a lot just by going there. And you can taste them too. They recommend that you taste a little bit of those plants and learn about them. So basically we need to listen, because every human and every plant has our own song to sing. We have our own toxins and our own gifts to offer. So listen closely and pay attention. Find plant friends that you can harmonize with. and cultivate and care for your friends. Some of those plants out there just may not do well with you. If you get a stomach ache, don't use them again. Some may really help you, and you can use them a lot. But also feed our pollinators and grow some garden tea. So I hope that you have learned lots from this. And if you want to get onto my email list, I'd be happy to add that to you. I'll have lots of information to share throughout the year. It's a free club, and it's at janewildgarden@gmail.com. And we meet at different gardens, different times of the year, especially if you live here locally. We'd love to have you. So thanks for coming, and I hope you enjoy your garden tea and the rest of the day.